What's the ideal timing to do a root dig? Is there a certain stage of the crop?
So I would say usually pre-tassel or right around tassel. Generally, we want to do a root dig when we know or when we think the majority of the feeding is done, because that's when we're going to see the maximum amount of injury on there. So, generally, I would say go out and if we see a lot of beetles flying around in the field, then that would suggest to us that the majority of the larvae are done feeding. They've transitioned to an adult and they've came out. So that would be the ideal time to go in. But if we're in a situation where maybe we don't have a lot of rootworm pressure, or we're just out there because we're curious, we want to evaluate. We've heard our neighbors have had some issues with rootworm, and I would say right before tassel or during tassel would be a good time to go out.
One thing you need to keep in mind is if you wait too long, you will have a lot of this regrowth that comes in, and it actually hides the actual injury you had on the back of it. So you may not get to really see or evaluate it properly. So that's why going early really helps, because then you get to see what the real injury was from the rootworm. If you wait too long, like in this case, we kind of waited a little bit longer, you can see a lot of regrowth that came and kind of masked the actual injury. But you can see in this over here, this is your typical goosenecking that happens from the rootworm.
And I would say, to add to the conversation, one of the trickier things with this pest is the interaction with the environment, right? So, every year we're either dealing with, it seems like recently we're dealing with a drought or just saturated soils. And one of the issues with managing corn rootworm is, depending on the weather, you may not know you have a problem unless there's a wind event. And so, when we start looking at the impact on drought, we tend to have more rootworm feeding when the conditions are dry. And then you combine that with a windstorm, and that's when you see lodged plants like that. But you look at some of the weather, last year would be a prime example. We were a little bit wetter in the spring. We had a little bit more soil moisture. And so when we have more soil moisture, we typically don't see less feeding in spots. We just see less symptomology. And so that's, again, to go back to being proactive, the importance of going out and digging. Just because you don't see a problem doesn't mean you don't have a problem. So it's really good to get out there and just take a look, while the silks are out and dig roots.